assigned brothers to be um, we each assigned members to be coaches of each sorority that would register. And so we had 9 sororities register, which was, I believe the fee was $500. And then they had to submit a roster where we had to fill out waivers and make sure that it was okay for everybody to be doing what they were doing. And then it was basically like a decathlon of sorts. There was an Olympic day, there was a dodgeball day. There was a dunk tank that we had outside the front of the house for people to donate. And so it was basically just a bunch of kind of schoolyard games in the name of, raising money for cancer. And so over the course of that time, brothers are raising money individually. Sorority girls are donating. We're reaching out to alumni and to corporations to get donations from them. So we had a few corporate donations and 1 corporate match. And so the grand total, I want to say, is a little under $55,000 for this year, which is a little less than last year, but we have about half the active membership. So the money raised per individual was much higher this year.
Yeah, it's really, you got a lot to be proud of with that result.
Yeah, we definitely, that's something that we really poured our heart and soul into, given that we hadn't really had any chance. That was the first time we were allowed to do really much of anything. We weren't even allowed to play in intramural sports for the majority of last year. That's how restricted it was. So when we had this opportunity to actually do something that is not only bringing the house together, but is something that we can involve other people with on campus, that was something exciting to do. So
that's great. Questions, guys?
Yeah, David, can you give us some of the reasons for the divisiveness that occurred over the last year? What led to the whole uproar?
Right. So basically where this problem all started was we, over the course of, I want to say the mid 2010s, sort of developed this tendency of being very comfortable in where we were at, on like kind of the social hierarchy. So we would be throwing, registering and throwing like upwards of 30 to 36 parties that were like full blown parties. And it would happen any night of the week. And we were able to stay out of trouble because we had probably 15 to a dozen or so guys that were just academic studs, completely on top of their game, and were able to create a culture that everybody would follow where, hey, it's okay to be like, have a good time as long as you are also keeping up with your school, being involved on campus. And so that culture was able to thrive kind of on campus until there was sort of a shift that happened where that wasn't enforced so much. And we started more so just being concerned with the social aspect of things. So we would have people that were consistently trying to defend us for actions that we would be found liable for by the university. So say somebody would get hurt at a party, we would get in trouble for it, and then we would just kind of defend our action instead of taking a measure to kind of eliminate any future incidents. So there were a lot of rules created because of things that happened at Sigma Chi, at Purdue, that were the result of us not being responsible for our actions. And so over time, the culture of people that were just there to have a good time and were just there to break things, screw around, started to grow because those guys would get bidded and then they would bid more people like them. So then it became this really small island of people at the top who were just sort of holding it all together. And then in 2018 or something, we got our first charge, which led to our first period on probation. And then that followed through COVID. COVID only made it worse because we lost a lot of traditions because we were gone from the house. And then we came back and we were in this watered down version of college. And so over time, we racked up 11 straight semesters, or I think it was either 11 or 12 straight semesters of getting some form of probation. And we were on deferred suspension for the semester and a half before I took over. And we are still on deferred suspension now. So I was actually able to get us through the first semester in that 12 semester period without charges. And that was because everybody was, totally, it seemed like the first time everybody realized that there was no way out of this situation that didn't involve us just doing the work ourselves, even though, what was the issue and why we were so complacent over the past, years is because we could always point the finger at the people above us, because we would come in as undergrads and have to do the time for a crime that we didn't commit because those guys graduated and did it as they were outgoing seniors. So it's kind of that lack of personal responsibility, I think, for the House that has really led us to this kind of divisiveness, because over the course of this last spring, guys have really had to choose, like, listen, I haven't been getting a whole lot out of this experience. I don't think this is for me. I joined this fraternity to have a good time, and it hasn't really been a good time. I haven't given what I expected. None of this is my fault, and I think that it's unfair. And so that's kind of the one camp that you have guys in, which part of me is, it's hard not to, take that from the experience that you've been given. And on the other side of that fence are guys that realize that they kind of got the short end of the stick, but the stick is a tremendous fraternity with a tremendous history and a tremendous potential to impact your life in a way that not a whole lot of other organizations can in the world. And they realize that, even though it's a horrible time to kind of just live through as an undergrad, when you see, all these other fraternities kind of going through and doing way worse things than us and having to not, get in as much trouble. But at the same time, it centers you in the fact that like, listen, we're called to a higher, standard. We're being held to a higher standard because we're capable of doing so. And so those guys have really, been inspiring for me, because they've buckled down. They're like, listen, we've realized that we have to do the work. We realize that we're being called to be, more exemplary people than those around us. And that's because we are. And so that's kind of where the line was drawn in the sand. And it just took a while for people to sort of choose what side they were on. There are a lot of people that are, I would say a handful of people that would pretty much openly criticize me in a group, but then I would sit them down and have a conversation with them, and they would be much more amendable to what we were actually trying to do. And so it was a lot of groupthink, a lot of people trying to sway each other, because there were pretty influential people on both sides of the argument. A lot of the older ones were the ones that felt they were being treated unfairly and felt that they were being victimized. And so they obviously have more respect and more pull just because of their age. And so that was something that was really tough to deal with. But I would say that it was kind of divided along pledge classes in that regard, which I think is really kind of interesting to note, given that my pledge class and the freshmen, or now sophomores, have a very different culture than the two above us. But those are the two pledge classes that rushed us. So that would be my answer.
And one other question, with the reduced number of actives in the fraternity, what consequence has that had on the finances of operating the organization?
Well, Bernie is definitely aware that money has been an issue in terms of dues collection and in terms of just keeping the lights on.
Let me
But
talk to that.
yeah, you can
because
feel
I'm in
that.
the middle of that. 55 live-ins is the break-even point. And so in January, when the membership review was going on in early February, when people had to make their decision about whether they're going to live in the house or get other, live out of the house, it was very up in the air, because the university had said they wanted to, the IFC rather at the university said they wanted to shut 202 Littleton down for 2 years, and the International was doing a membership review to see whether or not the charter would be revoked, and the chapter would be shut down for 4 years and then recolonized. So about out of the 60 left, about 30 decided that they better take this, what they perceive to be the safe route, and make outside arrangements. So there's 29 that are going to live in first semester and 31 going to live in the second semester. And the shortfall for that is about $15,000 a semester. So that's $30,000. And then Gavin Phillips' work in these sessions that he's conducting, it's a weekend every other month, isn't it, David?
Yeah, I don't know if it was this past semester. I'm not sure if we have another one planned. I think that we have more stuff planned with, it's about, I would say it's about every month and a half we have something.
Yeah, well, those efforts are going to be another 50,000. So we've got an $80,000 shortfall. Dora and I started the annual fund as a future fund to make sure we didn't have to have another capital campaign for the house, so that, he and Harold Force knew a lot about building. And they said you need to put away 1.5% of the construction costs each year so that you can put a new roof on when you have to, paint it when you have to, new HVAC when you have to. That amounts to $80,000. And last year we raised, because of inflation, we raised it to $100,000 to make sure the chapter house stays in good shape. So what we want to do this year, and the first mailing will go out in about 10 days, we want to raise an additional $80,000. And what we're doing is we're asking everybody who has donated, please donate what you have in the past and maybe throw in another $100 or $200. And we're going to be talking to, we're going to have class leaders and hero leaders, or hero leaders and class leaders that are going to talk to everybody who has not donated and say, look, here's our shortfall for what's going on here. So donate $100 or $200 to get us through this. And then if we get more than 180,000, why we'll put whatever we get over 100,000 in this annual fundraising, we'll put aside for developmental purposes for the chapter. So that's what's going on money wise. And David was going to start some fundraising on his own undergraduates. I said, no, let the alumni take care of that. And you focus on this revitalization plan and making sure we don't get restricted again, by the university or whoever, and get us back on the track. And his as I think I mentioned, his father and uncle were Delta SIGs, and he told me he's committed to getting the chapter back on a road that it'll even be better than it ever was. So,
Bernie, that fundraising sounds more like getting money in for capital assets as opposed to the daily operational.
well, the daily operation will be a one-time thing, because we'll be back to 55 people living in the chapter house after this coming academic year. That shouldn't be a problem. And then we'll have to see, on the revitalization, we'll have to see how that can be funded. Other questions?
Yeah, I've got a question. David, do you think the shortened pledgeship, how long did you pledge? 6 weeks?
My pledgeship was 5, but we're actually, I can talk to that process. It's actually, I'll let you finish your question. Sorry.
And but I was wondering do you feel that slows down? I mean, I am a unique person in my fall class. These guys are spring class, pledge class, the rest of them here. But I pledged from when school started after Labor Day in 54 till May of 55, because we got into trouble with the university a couple of times. I mean, the pledge class we had a party at the Mulberry Conservation Club with the Triad plus the Phi Gams. And Vigam was in charge of it, and he stole the keg pump and wrote a check. Of course, it was easy for the Dean of Men's office to follow that back, but so we couldn't get initiated till May, and then they used to have a Miami Triad dance party, and they had a party out at what they called Black Rock, which was a place out on South River Road that we used to have. I don't know if an alum owned that land or what, something, but anyway, Kappa fell off the rock. And so the whole fraternity was on Social Pro to the end of the year, but didn't affect any of their stuff. But anyway, so I was a long time pledge. I mopped the kitchen every day for 6 months or more. But our class plus the spring class have stuck together through the years. And I know some classes have, and some classes never see each other after they graduate. And I just wondered if there wasn't enough discipline and forcing to work together with a short pledge thing. And I apologize for the length of my question.
I think I think that there is much more of a pressure to do a good job with pledgeship, given that how short it is, and given how little time you are given to sort of mold the kind of brother that you want to mold and the pledge class that you want to mold in such a confined period of time. But what I can tell you is that after the membership review memorandum dropped, it was kind of one of the points of emphasis that they stressed was that our pledgeship has to follow the Sigma Chi international statutes of pledgeship, which is to the letter of the law. And it's very corporate. It's very online module heavy. It's very structured. And there's absolutely no feasible way that we can have pledge classes that are as close as the one that I'm talking to right now, if we just follow that. So our response to that, or my response in tandem with our alumni that are kind of helping it, Phil Steele's involved with that, as well as our new Magister who's coming in. We're going to extend kind of the pledge. It's going to be like kind of the pledge period. It's going to be an umbrella, an initiation, instead of being the end of pledgeship. It's now, because of the world that we're in and because of the restrictions that are placed upon us and because of the watchful eye that is on us until initiation, that's going to be, instead of the bookend, it's going to be the middle of the book. So initiation is going to kind of be this midway point where the Sigma Chi sanctioned pledgeship ends and where we sort of institute our own Delta plan, which is much more tailored towards bringing the pledge class together. Lots of things that challenge them mentally, psychologically to really bond to each other. And we're going to structure it in a way that, you know, during those 4 weeks, I think is what we have planned, we'll be able to, because we will have known them for longer during that pledgeship process, it'll be kind of like an extended rush in a way where we get to kind of talk to them and we don't do anything. There's nothing demeaning happening. And as a younger house, it'll be better for us to know the guys anyways. To the point where after initiation happens, we're able to go in and we're able to actually create, you know, a curriculum that keeps them close. And I think it's good that we were forced to make this change, because it'll force us to really look at the things that we've done in the past that when I pledged maybe didn't work so well, that need to be changed, but that the only reason that we were doing them at the time was that was always how it had been done. So I think there's completely a way to do it. Do I think that the Sigma Chi International Fraternity would let us do any of that to create that bond? Absolutely not. They told us it was hazing to require pledges to memorize the name, hometown, and major of an active brother. So that's kind of that's the body that we're dealing with here. But we have kind of the brain trust is in full steam trying to work around this and trying to get keep the secrecy of what we do safe and create, the men that have been coming through this house for generations.
David, just be sure that you don't have what headquarters would say is hazing. You
Oh
gotta
yeah, we know.
really be sure that you don't have hazing, either during the 5-week pledgeship or this 4 weeks.
Right.
Yeah, that's really
Right.
important. And also,
We just don't have time to teach them Delta history, Bernie. That's the issue, is that they can't, Sigma Chi doesn't allow us to do that.
well, why is that hazing?
It's not hazing. They just don't have enough time to be,
Oh, you mean in the 5
it's not
weeks?
hazing. We just can't,
Yeah. Yeah, no, I
Yeah.
know, yeah, okay. Right,
and as far as hazing goes, it's more like what isn't hazing than what is hazing, because they've made the definition as such where if anybody comes forward for anything and any reason, if anybody rubs in the wrong way, they'll be able to get you in trouble for a hazing law. And that doesn't really matter how conservative the state is with legislature. I mean,
well,
they're all written pretty similarly.
yeah, that's true.
Disgusting.
My second question was, and you don't, there's no way, I know it's campus wide with sororities and fraternities, but I understand most of the seniors live out of the houses. There's no way that could change. I think that would help keep everybody in the brotherhood better, because I don't know how much time an active that lives out of the house. I don't know whether he eats at the house or whether he just comes over for chapter meetings.
Yeah, I agree. I think that the older pledge classes living in or living out of the house has been pretty detrimental to our entire sort of culture, because there's been a little more of a disconnect with those guys that separate themselves. And that's natural. You're not living in the house. You're, instead of being next door to me in the hallway, you are a mile away. And so logistically, those guys do come over to eat meals regularly. They are not they're not totally absent, but they are much more absent than a brother who is living.
Yeah.
And so I think that it'll be interesting to see, because I know there are a lot of people in my pledge class who plan on living in their senior year, and that is more than any of the pledge classes that I've seen come through here in recent history. Granted, I've had a much smaller window, but I think we're going to start trending. And if we start establishing the trend of it's expected to live in your senior year, and it's expected to live in as you get older because the house needs you to, and your mentorship and your experience is going to be instrumental in molding the guys that come behind you. And so I think that it's all about how we phrase it, and it's all about how we act going forward. But it really only takes 2 years to totally change the traditions and culture of a chapter. So it just is a matter of conviction.
Every development class isn't going to have somebody as mature and sharp as you are. So I congratulate you on what you're trying and what you're accomplished, and at your young age, because it seems like you age pretty fast between freshman and senior if you're active on campus and in a brotherhood.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, it definitely has aged me. I had to grow up. A little faster than I wanted, but it's all right. I'm here.
You're not gray haired yet or bald.
Yeah,
Now,
I'm gonna go gray. I'm not gonna go bald.
are the when you initiate, are you going to give them their pins?
Yeah, you can't. Yeah, they're all gonna get their pins,
Good. Good.
but they can't vote. They cannot vote, and they cannot hold office until they complete their memorization obligation. So
Okay, that's reasonable.
yeah, and it's now, if you don't have Ritual for Life done as starting this fall, if you don't have Ritual for Life done and you don't have your memorization obligation done as per the Ritual and sigmachi.org, I think it's within 180 days of your initiation, you're automatically suspended. Like the International Fraternity suspends you until you complete it. So it's really not, we're just following what they tell us on that, which is fine. Because
Sure.
I said, that sounds like a hazing to me.
Wow.
George, you started to say something. I just thought,
I'm sorry, what's going on?
I thought George Loris was gonna say something.
No, I'm listening intently, and I'm kind of stunned by the whole thing, to be honest with you. But we'll talk about it when we get together in the West Lafayette.
Yeah, and we're gonna have lunch. We're gonna have lunch at the chapter house on Friday. And David and I will talk more about that June 30th, but David, do you think the members of the chapter would be interested in the fact that when we were there was one telephone for the whole house?
Yeah, I mean, you could tell a lot of stories that would be head scratchers for the guys at the table, for sure.
We had one television set that was in the library.
Yeah.
One black and white television set in the library.
Watched American Bandstand in the afternoon.
There you go.
And
Maverick.
yeah,
Maverick, oh yeah. Watch Maverick.
Sunday afternoon.
Yeah, yeah.
David, I don't know if you have ever heard of the cartoon Pogo. It was very, very popular through most of our lives. One of the favorite sayings that came out of that was, "We have met the enemy and they is us." That's what you guys have come to the realization of.
Yeah. We're gonna get through it though. We'll be good.
I'm very, very impressed, David, with your acumen, your intelligence, the way you are taking on the responsibility. Good on you, man.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. It's all, I mean, it's kind of thrown in the deep end with a cinder block tied around my waist. So
You're in a historic role, David, being consul at this point in the chapter's history. And from what I see, you're doing a good job of it. So keep up the good fight.
I appreciate that. Yeah, it's definitely, I mean, it's nice that I had two past presidents in the House for me to sort of talk to and to help like kind of bring me into my role, help me transition. That they were all they had it not as bad as me. And were partially responsible for me having it as bad as I had it.
That's right.
So it was kind of nice to have their expertise, but at the same time, I was like, okay, like, can I go now? Like, you guys are kind of responsible for the shit sandwich.
Yeah, right. David, what has it taken to get a buy-in from the brothers who are now going to be the core of the chapter? What is the buy-in factor?
The buy-in factor is, I think really it's just, at this point, it's leading by example. I think at this point, the guys want to be able to say that they're Sigma Chi at this point. They're proud of the work they put in. They're proud of the bond that they've made. And they've sort of recommitted. I want to say the buy-in is they've sort of taken that final step and recommitted to the chapter. And I think a large part of that is seeing how hard the guys like me and my pro-consuls and my our Queester and our Magister, and seeing how hard those guys work, it has sort of rallied guys around us to sort of, want to do more and want to be a part of the House going forward. And something that I've done is I've tried to provide small victories. Like, we're trying to get more Brotherhood social events going. I've gotten the endorsement of the both highest ranking vice presidents in IFC, their president, and I just need to work on the assistant dean, but he's on board with it too, from what I hear. And I'll try to get us off of full social probation and onto a limited social probation by this fall, to be able to actually give the guys that stuck around some functions and an ability for us to be social in some form over the course of this next semester. All of those functions will be dry, and we're going to phrase it as a way to just sort of increase our knowledge of function management, because we haven't had when we do get off social probation, when I leave my office, as per our current sanctions, we're going to be able to throw parties with alcohol, and we'll be just as liable to get in trouble as we were before. And so instead of just falling back into the same hole that we, just dug ourselves out of, we want to have the ability to sort of throw parties ramping up in roster numbers to the point where we will be able to function efficiently and sustainably in the future. So that's
smart.
kind of, I'm trying to give guys parties. I'm trying to give them hope, but I don't want to give them false hope. So that's kind of where the buy-in is coming from, I would say, mainly. And I think a lot of guys would give you different answers too. I think a lot of people are in it for different reasons, which I think is cool. And I think it's the reason why we have as many different, like, we still are a house of very different temperaments, talents, and convictions.
It sounds like you are leading by setting the example, and that's a very solid way to do it.
It's kind of the only way I got.
Brandon Cutler, you have a relationship with Brandon Cutler, don't you?
Right. He and I had, I want to say it was 3 pretty long, just one-on-one sit downs. We have a good relationship, a great working relationship. I want to say I have his favor, even though I am a chapter president of a chapter on deferred suspension. Other people have told me that he's fond of us and he's fond of me. Because I think I just treated him. I just know how to work him better than the past guys do. And that's really all it is with Brandon. But yeah, I think I'm courting the favor of pretty much any and every administrative body that I can, because it's a lot easier asking somebody for a favor if they like you and instead of the other way around. So
Yeah, and share with these guys that you plan to run for IFC president next year.
yeah, I do. That's kind of the reason why I'm like having to have so many sit downs with Brandon, is because I want to be able to plant the seeds, because he has a lot of power and who they pick, even though it's like it's like pseudo democratic, even though it's really not. It's just who you know and who you can how you can structure a message and talk to the right people. But
Who is he?
he is the dean of fraternity, sorority, and cooperative life at Purdue. So he is kind of the reporting body. So it goes the dean, then Brandon, and then it goes kind of out into the different Greek councils. And so that's kind of, I have a good relationship with him. The dean of students stays largely uninvolved because she's got more pressing things to handle. He's the top of the food chain pretty much, from an administrative standpoint of who we have to deal with. And so I think, I will be putting together a campaign to kind of run for IFC president after this. And I think I have a damn good chance of winning, because there's not going to be anybody who's would have a better public reputation and public resume than me, considering that we'll still be here in the fall. So
John, Brandon Cutler was our speaker 5 years ago when we had lunch at Delta Delta Chapter House. He was our speaker. So, in fact, it's kind of interesting. At 2:40 p.m. Eastern time today, I got an email from Brandon with copies to Tom Hall and several other alums, but saying that he wanted to work with our alumni with our 150th chapter anniversary coming up, that either collectively or separately, the university wanted to be involved in celebrating the 150 years of Sigma Chi at Purdue. So
Sesquicentennial.
yeah. So that's good news. Excuse me.
David's more worried about the 151st.
Yeah, Purdue,
Sorry?
its first year of academic classes when the charter. Okay, any other questions for David? Well, thank you, David. And you're welcome to, listen in on until I know you have to go. Maybe
I've got to roll. I'm sorry. But it was great. It was great talking to you guys. I'm happy to answer your questions. feel free to reach out whenever. And thank you for your continued support. Obviously, this has been a rough time for everybody. I can tell you that, we're definitely, in my opinion, I think we're through the worst of it. But then again, I can't predict the future, but I can guarantee you that I will be handing it down to the next guy a lot better than was handed to me. So thanks, guys.
Okay, thank
Thank
you,
you, David.
Gardwell. And
Thank you.
I'll see you June 30th.
Not if I see you first. Proud to be.
Nice young man.
Yeah.
Wow.
Very sharp.
We're lucky to have him in that job at this
Oh, yeah.
time.
Can I buy stock in his future?
Yeah, he's,
He's your next senator.
let me,
You know, it amazes me though. I hear this and I, reading about all the other crap that's going on in the world. I'm thinking to myself, what is going on with this woke generation and all this lack of discipline and responsibility? And I mean, it really blows my mind. I got to tell you, I'm scared to death for my grandchildren. I really am. I keep thinking maybe they ought to reinstitute the draft. That might help get some of these yahoos.
well,
straightened.
you make a good point, George, and I've been thinking about that a lot too. And recently we've spent quite a bit of time with our grandchildren, and we have 5. And they're not like what you read about these transgender folks and all that at all. I mean, one of our granddaughters, Alyssa, who graduated from NYU a couple of years ago, she applied about 4 months ago for both a Fulbright and to get a master's degree at the London School of Economics. And she got them both. So in October, she's going to teach at Transylvania University in Romania on a Fulbright.
Wow.
And then the following September, she's going to London to get her master's degree at the London School of Economics. And her older sister's 4 years at Hollywood, works the Academy Awards and a lot of the award shows, Shark Tank. And I mean, she's, they both tend to be on the liberal side, but that's only because they're so young. They'll turn, well, John has never turned from the liberal side, so maybe they won't.
Well, keep in mind, I was a Republican up until George Bush won.
Oh, okay.
And the reason I changed is because a very well-known climatologist who worked at Goddard Space Flight Center produced one of the early predictions of climate change.
Oh,
And when it reached the White House, Rumsfeld and Bush and his staff redacted so much of it, they changed it. They couldn't face the facts. They couldn't face the scientific information. And I said, look, if this is the kind of rule by fiat as opposed to science and rationality, I don't want any part of it.
well,
That was
I
what changed
don't
me.
want to get into a deep political discussion, but if you look at the Biden administration, there's an awful lot of rule by fiat.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay.
I'm sure we're going to have some active political discussions when we all get together. So.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. But we have one grandson, and he's a business major at George Mason University. He's been on the dean's list for 6th semester. He's working hard. We got fourth grandchild is at the Savannah College of Art and Design, and she's focused on a career. And anyway, and the 5th one wants to go to a big town. Anyway, and my grandchildren, Mary and I feel fortunate that we don't see the stuff that we read about that's going on with that generation. I think there's hope.
Well, I agree. I feel the same way about mine. They're all very, very successful, and we're very proud of them. But I'm just worried about the general environment for that generation is not great. But anyway, we can talk about that another time.
Let me go over the plans for our reunion and get your comments.
get my notepad.
Yep, get your notepad. Okay, here we go. September 7 to 10. Lodging will be at Dora's Homewood Suites, where I think all of you have been there in the past, and Susie there is going to get us that breakout room for when we need it, when we want to get together. Friday morning, Bill Volley, Kurt, your younger brother, he's organized. He's 5 years young. He's class 63. And he's organized several reunions for their class. And he gave me the name of Jill Anderson in the alumni office, and she's been terrific. So she's arranged for us to meet at the alumni office on Friday morning, and has 2 6-passenger golf carts, and they'll provide drivers for each and guides for each one and take us on a campus tour. And I've gotten to know Mung Chang, the new president, since he came to Purdue as Dean of Engineering about 6-7 years ago. And so at any rate, if he's in town that day, he has agreed to meet with us. We have a photo opportunity with him while we're on that campus tour. Then we have lunch set up Friday at 202 Littleton Street. And we ought to talk about that at some point, about each of. Kurt, can you send us words to College of the Pacific song?
Yeah.
I think you ought to lead us in singing College of the Pacific song.
Okay.
And anyway, we ought to, somebody ought to talk about the one telephone. George, maybe you'd be the one to talk about the one telephone, because you had Queester bills for long distance calls. They don't know what a long distance telephone charge is.
Yeah, I'd be pleased to tell them all about that. No problem.
Do they still have the kind of Hell Week that they had, where they've got the big fire in the fireplace and they had to build a fire engine to put it out?
Can't do that anymore. That's hazing.
Geez.
Yeah.
Like, I could talk about Pusey and me, mostly Pusey, putting together a machine that actually put the fire out, and we were told to stop.
Okay. Why don't you take the that fire experience from Hell Week,
Okay.
and
That when Pusey was a ball of fire?
No,
yeah.
That was a different time.
Okay,
that was a different time. We can have Bob talk about that.
yeah.
And Pete, you want to talk about getting called on the bricks and the examiner hole and how to change the sheets on the riverbed?
Yeah, sure.
And
Kurt, if you lead us, if you talk about
We'll talk about the green beanies too.
yeah, right. Kurt, if you'd do your song leader role and talk about each weekend we had to learn the songs of the visiting team, and then tell them about how you found the words College of the Pacific, and lead us in that. I think we can all sing that. Anyway, we can
I
have some.
found the words to that, and I'm looking for them now, but I found the words to that, and so I can make copies of that for everybody.
Yeah, and send it out. Send it out before we get together. So because it takes longer for us to memorize things now.
memorize. What's this? Memorize?
So then we'll have a little bit of downtime after that back at Holiday Inn, and then Friday dinner. Bill Volley recommended the Fowler House, and this building was built in 1852 by Moses Fowler, who is a very successful businessman in Lafayette. And anyway, they have tours, and he says it's really an interesting place. So we're lined up there for dinner on Friday night. Saturday morning, I thought we could have some downtime or some time in our conference room, sleep in, have a late breakfast, have time in our room there at the Holiday Inn, and then have lunch at Purdue Alumni Office. And we can have pizza or something brought in for lunch there. And then they're lining up for us at the Purdue Library on Saturday afternoon. They have a digital archive collection that Jill Anderson at the alumni office says is just terrific. And they have, think about different things you might be interested in. They have one presentation on Amelia Earhart. And I'm sure they have astronaut stuff. I'm going to ask her about if they have anything on Greg Harbaugh and his astronaut sessions, you know, on his space travel. But she says that Purdue Library archives, the digital archives, is really, really good. And then Saturday evening at the Union Building, they did a makeover about 3 years ago. And they put in an upscale restaurant called 811 Bistro. And I've heard from several people that it's really special. And so we have dinner lined up there Saturday evening. And we may have two of the folks from the alumni office visit, you know, joining us for dinner that evening in the 811 Bistro. And then Sunday we head back, head out of Lafayette. So, any
Well, it's great.
comments?
Great of you to pull all that together, Bernie.
Sounds good.
Yeah,
I think you know it'll be, you know, we got a little bit of downtime in there that'll help, and you know, give us a chance to sing Loopy and fly walk into the grocery store.
You know, I've been refreshing my memory. When I walk the dog by myself in the neighborhood, I sing those songs to myself. and people look at me and I'm laughing, and you know, I'm kind of nuts, but anyway.
Well, yeah, one of us ought to talk about Friday night with a keg of beer and.
Oh, yeah. Well, I can tell them all about, you know, our surreptitious a check for Katie and Lucky to get a barrel of beer that I'd have to talk to the faculty advisor and to convince him that was a legitimate charge. You know?
And we got to tell them, you guys can't do this like we did.
Well, I think maybe we shouldn't talk about alcohol too much during this time, other than
Yeah,
a few references.
yeah, you're right. Yeah, leave alcohol out of the equation. Yeah, yeah.
Well, there wasn't much alcohol. One keg of beer for 80 guys was not a hell of a lot, I got to tell you. So.
Yeah, but I ain't talking about any alcohol. Pete makes a good point.
Yeah,
In
you're
the,
right.
in the house, you can talk about going across town and getting a drink or something for some type of party, but I mean,
Yeah.
in the house, I don't think it's smart.
is Harry still there? Chocolate shop?
Yep, it's still there.
Wow.
All right.
Okay, why don't we go around for the good of the order? Pete, start us off.
Well, I hope the chapter's on the way back. I'm starting to do the project you gave me. I'm not doing very well so far, but I haven't been able to spend a lot of time on it this week, but I'm going to start tomorrow again. But other than that, we got nice weather finally, and we've had a little rain. Most of the crops are planted and a lot of them are coming up. Family's doing well. My son's down in Florida right now for 3 days. He's down to check out their double wide that they inherited from Robin's side. And everybody else is busy, I think. I'm doing pretty good. I've had a little bit of problems with some nerve endings. Part of it's the disease and part of it's the movements I do. But I think I'm still on for fall, and I've got Hammy and I are going to do some stuff together to see if we can work it out so it works a little better. But that's about all I have. Feel pretty good, really. Went to the doctor yesterday and he said I was still kicking, so that was good.
Zeus, you look like you're back in Michigan.
Yeah, just got back about a week ago. We had visitors while the last week we were in Ponte Vedra. Pusey's came by. Bob and Shirley had a nice lunch with them. They were on their way to Fernandina Beach and then on to Tennessee. And then I guess they're on a cruise in Europe right now. But we had a lot of fun with Bob and Shirley. But we're back in Michigan, and I'll tell you, the drive down there with all the stuff has got to be kind of a chore. 2 days with a stop in beautiful Beckley, West Virginia is at 87 years old is a little more than I can handle now. So I don't know. It might be last year, may be our last. I'm not sure. We'll see.
How's George's back?
Well, she had a what they call a kyphoplasty, which is a free injection of cement into the crushed vertebra, and that worked fine. But what happens is that strengthened that vertebra and the vertebra above or below it, which are also kind of weak. One of those fractured, so she's got another fracture. So that's going to heal without any surgery. That's just going to heal over 2 or 3 months. And so she's doing okay. She's got a few heart issues. She's getting a what's that electric shock that's called? I can't think of it, to bring her heart into rhythm again.
With the paddles?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So because she has AFib, as you know, Bernie, and so she's coming along okay. She's, we're getting it done. And the kids are doing fine. We're really thrilled with all the grandchildren, and the children are doing very, very well. So we'll talk about that when we see you. And we look forward to having a big glass of Sigma Chi Pinot Noir while we're down there.
Right.
So, and hashing old war stories. Okay.
Kurt, what's going on?
Well, I just finished yesterday having a 2-hour surgery at the dentist where they lasered all the right side of my teeth to and get rid of the bacteria. That also killed all the bacteria. Now I have to do the left side on Monday. So I can't eat anything but soft foods until the first 2 days, and I can't brush my teeth for a week after they do that. So I've got some stuff that I put in my mouth that's kills all the bacteria in my mouth, and I have to swish that along around gently, not too hard to cause any problems. So we're doing that now. Sandy's been having some problems. We're trying to rectify those. She's had about every test you can think of, and she's having stomach pains, and nobody can find out what's causing it.
Maybe she's pregnant.
Pardon?
Maybe she's pregnant.
Yeah, right. So anyway, our 65th anniversary is June the 2nd. So we're going over to the Animal Kingdom Lodge and spend a couple days over there on the June the 1st and June the 2nd. So we're looking forward to that. And otherwise than that, my doctor says I'm in pretty good shape. So my heart doctor said I was the best physical specimen that he'd seen that day. And that's not saying much.
Were you the youngest guy he's seen that day?
No, there's a lot of them younger.
That's like being the world's tallest midget, Kurt.
Kurt, I haven't heard of that kind of dental treatment. What brought the problem on?
The dental treatment, gaps in where the bacteria can build. And so they wanted me to do this, and it improves by about 40%. The gets rid of about 40% of the gaps where bacteria can grow in your gums.
Okay,
It doesn't hurt with the hardest thing is she must have stuck me 10 times with not Novocaine anymore, but whatever it's called now. The
lidocaine.
is it lidocaine? I don't know what it is.
Nerve gas.
Hey, Pete, can I interrupt for a second? Have you tried to call Lambertus? Because I can't get a number that
No,
works
no.
for him.
I can try again, but I haven't, I talked to him last year, but then he wanted to keep talking sometime, but then it doesn't work sometimes.
Yeah, he's off the radar for me. I can't find him anywhere, but.
Speaking
Okay,
of that,
I'm sorry to interrupt.
has anybody talked to Stern lately?
I talked to him about 3 weeks ago, and he said they're all tied up with they're in and that, and he wasn't going to come to the reunion, he said.
That's too bad.
Yeah, it is. It is. It's a shame. Yeah.
How about Trishman?
Yeah, I talked to Trishman about 3 weeks ago. In fact, we had this a little bit later. I said, why don't you, in our calls, he says, well, I take a nap. So I purposefully made the call an hour later so that he could get up from his nap and join us, but he didn't. And I also, I said, look, ride down to the reunion with me. And he said, well, he can't ride more than an hour. I said, look, I'll stop once an hour, and and we can stop once an hour. It's just a 3-hour trip down there. But he's limited mobility wise, and he just doesn't want to do it, which is too bad. John Andrew Sand III,
Interesting to hear.
Evanston, Illinois, or Green Bay, Wisconsin, electrical engineering.
Some of that was right, Bernie. It's interesting to hear. I think, Kurt, you were talking about nerves and problems with nerves. I've had peripheral neuropathy developing over the last year or so in my toes and my forefeet. And the treatment my doctor recommends is live with it. There are not a lot of good recommended treatments for it, except acupuncture. So I've been under treatment for acupuncture now for the last 3 weeks or so, and I think it's actually working. It's amazing.
Yeah. Mary has that, and I never heard about acupuncture.
Yep. The one that I'm going to is a woman who said, I can fix that for you. And so far it's coming along. It ain't cheap and Medicare doesn't cover it, but so far it's doing some good.
Georgia had acupuncture for her back and it worked. And our little dog, which is a part dachshund, has had acupuncture a couple of times and it absolutely works every time. Amazing.
Really?
Yeah.
That's
yeah.
great.
Yeah.
That's great. So we're
We'll
leading an
check
active.
that out. That's good to know.
Yeah, we're leading an active life. We were on a camping trip for 8 days last week and before, and went over into New Mexico. And as I was saying earlier, we went to the VLA, the Very Large Array, which is 27 large radio telescopes that are just an amazing installation, and they're only going to expand it to even bigger. And then we went on to several other campgrounds and areas of New Mexico that we hadn't visited before. And we ended up down on the Mexican border. There's a town called Columbus, New Mexico. It's about 2 miles from the border. And there's Pancho Villa State Park there. Back in 1916, Pancho Villa's troops invaded the area trying to take over Columbus. And there was an army camp nearby led by Colonel, I think at that time, Blackjack Pershing, who of course went on to become a general and very prominent in World War I. What's interesting is the story that we were told or read is that the Germans were supporting Mexico in this invasion to redirect our attention from Europe, where World War I was underway. Well, it turns out Pete Pancho Villa himself didn't actually participate in the raid, and there weren't that many people killed. I mean, it's always bad, but it was in the tens as opposed to hundreds. And then Blackjack Pershing led a retribution raid into Mexico, and they chased Pancho Villa for 4 or 5 months, never found him, finally came home. But that was an interesting place to visit. That was the first time that aircraft were used in military surveillance, not warfare, but surveillance. And it was the old Jenny biplane aircraft. And they've got a replica of that in the museum there. It's really cool. So that was a good trip. And then Saturday, we're flying to Boston. Cherry's just 2 years younger than I am, and her big birthday is coming up. So we're going back to her brother's place in Sharon, Massachusetts, which is a suburb of Boston. And the whole family's going to gather there for her birthday. So we'll be back there, and it'll be fun to see everybody.
Hey, guys, I gotta go.
Okay,
Thank you.
Pete.
Yeah.
Good to see you, Pete.
guys. Thanks for
Pete.
joining us.
So anyway, we're gonna take a couple of days and go up to the coast of Maine and have some lobster and clam chowder. Enjoy the good things of the Maine coast. So life is good. You know, we're both in overall pretty darn good health, and got a couple other trips after that, including a camping trip in July back up to Colorado, going to Aspen and Gold Hill and Boulder and see people. And anyway, and I think I've mentioned that there's the last operating LST, which I, of course, was on LST 1083 in the United States, still operating, is homeported in Evansville, Indiana. And I'm looking at getting there latter part of September. I think it'd be great to walk the decks of an old LST, and
Sure.
it'd be pretty neat.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's what's going on.
Well, Mary and I are down here in Florida still in Florida until June 7th. We go back to Glenview, Illinois. So, so we're both in good health and not much going on. It's really quiet down here now. You know, they shoot a gun April 1st. Well, it goes off again May 1st. No problem getting a restaurant reservation or not much traffic on the roads.
Same thing true, Bernie, here in our Sun City. About 40% of the community goes away for the summer.
Do they? Yeah.
Yep. And as you say, restaurants, no problem. Traffic, much easier. As you say, somebody shoots a gun and all of the snowbirds go back home.
All right. Hey, Kurt, thanks again for shooting me or encouraging me to talk to your brother, Bill. He was really helpful in talking to the right people at Purdue.
Good.
Okay, guys. See you. We'll have another Zoom call in about 4 or 5 weeks. See you then.
Okay, thank you, Bernie.
Thanks, Bernie.
All
Good to
right.
see you all.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.